Welcome to the Debatable Podcast. Today, we are digging into the absolutely hardest question out there. Basically, if God is supposed to be totally powerful and entirely good, why is the world completely saturated with horrific suffering and evil?
And it is saturated. We are pulling from a massive pile of source material today. Everything from old scriptures to modern takes on real historical tragedies.
Right, and I am taking the realistic stance here. I am arguing for the soul-building and sovereignty view. It is simple, brutal truth. Suffering is a tool. God intentionally ordains it to force moral development, test us, and bring about ultimate redemption.
And I am tearing that down with the free will defense and what is called anti-theodicy. Evil is just the nasty, unavoidable byproduct of actual human freedom. And frankly, trying to package horrific trauma as some kind of divine lesson plan is just a gross minimization of reality.
That is just emotional rhetoric. Let us look at the actual foundation of the soul-building argument. You see this starting way back with Irenaeus and pushed by guys like John Hick. The core idea is that God never intended to build a cushy, safe little paradise filled with mindless robots.
No one is asking for robots.
But that is what you get without suffering. We are meant to be creatures who actually develop. Think about it. Virtues are totally worthless if they are never tested. An athlete only gets great because a coach pushes them to the absolute breaking point.
Humans are not athletes in a cosmic gym.
The principle is exactly the same. We face trials to forge courage and loyalty. The Islamic tradition points this out perfectly. Suffering is a brutal test to weed out the fakes from the true believers.
Weed out the fakes? That is incredibly callous.
It is realistic. The scholar Al-Ghazali said physical sickness is often the only way God can snap a totally arrogant person back to reality. A sovereign God orchestrates this stuff for a final concrete good.
I reject that entirely. You are literally making God the author of evil. I am coming from the Augustinian angle, backed up by Alvin Plantinga and John Feinberg. God does not write the script for evil. Humans abuse their free will, and that causes the mess.
That makes God look totally weak.
No, it makes logic work. Plantinga lays this out clearly. A world with free creatures who can actually choose is infinitely better than a programmed simulation. But genuine freedom structurally guarantees the possibility of evil.
So God just crosses his fingers and hopes for the best?
God respects the reality of freedom. If he forces you to do good, you are not free, period. Plus, look at Zachary Breiterman's concept of anti-theodicy. When you try to construct these neat little explanations like your soul-building theory, you accidentally turn evil into a good thing.
I am not calling it a good thing.
You literally just called it a divine lesson plan. If evil is just a teaching tool, we completely lose our moral outrage against it. You're justifying the unjustifiable.
I am giving it meaning. Your outrage does not solve anything. Richard Swinburne points this out beautifully. High-level virtues literally cannot exist without danger.
That is philosophical nonsense.
It is structural fact. You cannot have compassion if nobody is ever bleeding. You cannot have real courage without a fatal threat. If a parent constantly hovers and sweeps away every single rock from a child's path, the kid never learns to walk.
A scraped knee is not cancer.
It is the same mechanism of growth. GCU theology talks about this. Suffering is literally designed to make us hate this broken world. If life was a beach, we would obsess over temporary garbage. Pain shatters that illusion and makes us long for eternity.
Okay, I have to stop you right there. That parent-child analogy is a complete joke when you look at the real world. Sure, a parent lets a kid fall on the sidewalk, but a parent does not starve their kid or throw them into a gas chamber.
I am not saying
You
that.
are applying a scraped knee logic to catastrophic reality. Read Elie Wiesel's Night. He survived Auschwitz. He wrote about watching the SS hang a little boy from a gallows.
I know the story.
Then you know the boy was too light to snap his own neck. He hung there suffocating for half an hour while people were forced to watch. You are going to look at that and call it soul building? You are going to call that a divine gym coach pushing us? That is repulsive.
It is obviously a horrific tragedy, but
It is not a teaching moment. This is where the older Dionysian concept comes in. To actually take evil seriously, you have to admit it is a void. It is completely irrational. It has no neat little purpose. The second you give it a rational purpose, you philosophically justify it.
You are missing the massive theological hole you just dug. If evil is just this random, uncaused void flying around outside of God's control, then God is not sovereign. Stuff is just happening to him.
He does not need to orchestrate trauma to be sovereign.
Yes, he does. Look at Mark Talbot's work on compatibilism. The source material is very clear. God ordains evil without actually doing the evil himself.
Oh, come on. That is a blatant contradiction. How do you ordain something without doing it?
It is called primary and secondary causes. It is not that complicated. Look at the story of Joseph. His brothers beat him up and sell him into slavery out of pure malice.
Exactly. Human free will.
Wait, let me finish. Their choices were deeply sinful. But decades later, Joseph tells them, "You meant it for evil, but God meant it for good." It is a dual explanation.
That is just bad theology.
It is textual reality. Humans are totally guilty for their dirty choices, but God writes the overarching script. He uses their sins for a redemptive outcome. Your free will defense limits God. It puts humans in the driver's seat of history.
No, it acknowledges reality. Plantinga proved this. You cannot demand that God do something logically impossible, like making a square circle, or forcing a free person to choose good deterministically. That is not limiting God's power, it is respecting logic.
If human choices constantly wreck God's plan, then history is just blind chaos. How do you explain systemic, generational evil?
It is not blind chaos, it is the compounding wreckage of human sin. Let's look at Carl Ellis Jr. and his breakdown of systemic oppression. He calls it creaturism.
I have read Ellis.
Then you know it is about humans judging each other by superficial standards instead of recognizing the creator. This leads straight to racism and redlining. Ellis uses a gardening analogy.
Analogies do not negate God's divine control.
Listen to the analogy. A gardener puts pink flowers in terrible rocky soil and red flowers in rich soil. Obviously, the red ones thrive, but then the gardener actively builds walls to block the pink flower sun and rips off their petals.
Yes, humans are vicious. I said that.
But Ellis is showing that humans build those structural barriers. Personally mediated racism and Jim Crow laws are human inventions. When you say, oh, God ordained those racist barriers for a higher purpose, you are letting the human oppressor off the hook.
I absolutely am not. Compatibilism totally judges the oppressor. Joseph's brothers were still guilty. I am saying God does not waste the pain the oppressor causes. He redeems it.
No, you are blaming God for the oppressor's actions.
I am anchoring reality. Look at how this actually plays out for people who are hurting. Look at David Powlison and John Piper. They both dealt with brutal prostate cancer.
And they found personal comfort, sure.
More than comfort. Piper literally wrote, "Don't waste your cancer." If you think your cancer is just some random genetic mistake that God wished he could stop but couldn't because of logic, that breeds absolute despair.
That is completely dismissive of human resilience.
It is true. Recognizing God's absolute sovereignty strips away our pathetic illusion of self-sufficiency. It gives you the rock-solid comfort that your pain is not a random accident. It is being actively managed by a God who is in total control.
I will grant that for a natural illness, that mindset offers a psychological band-aid. But applying submission to moral evil is incredibly dangerous. That brings in Jewish anti-theodicy and the concept of holy protest.
Protest is just rebellion. It does not fix anything.
Rabbi Schneerson completely destroys your argument here. He said protesting against God when faced with confound evil is actually the highest form of faith.
Screaming at the sky is faith?
Yes. Look at Abraham fighting God over Sodom and Gomorrah. Shall not the judge of all the earth do what is just? Look at Job demanding a court date with the Creator.
Job got put in his place pretty fast.
But he didn't just sit there and take it as a soul-building exercise. He fought. You only protest because you firmly believe God is supposed to be good, and you demand that reality reflects that.
You do not get to make demands of God.
If you just accept all suffering as God's will, you breed toxic passive complacency. Holy protest forces us to get off our knees and actually eradicate evil.
You are totally ignoring the end of Job's story. God spoke out of the storm and Job repented in dust and ashes. He realized his human brain couldn't grasp the cosmic blueprint.
Because God bullied him into silence.
Because God is God. Look, to summarize my position, which actually holds up to scrutiny, understanding God's absolute sovereignty is the only anchor in suffering. Pain is ordained, it is a soul-building necessity, and the deepest good comes from our temporal distress.
And my summary is that your view justifies horrors. Prioritizing human free will and fighting back with holy protest is the only way to treat evil with the disgust it deserves. Humans cause evil, and we shouldn't package their victims' trauma into a twisted divine lesson plan.
Well, we are obviously never going to see eye to eye on this, but looking at the source material, I will say human suffering definitely pushes the total limits of our brains. It requires a lot more than just sitting around talking about it.
That is basically the only thing you have said that reflects reality. The pain defies your neat little formulas. Holding these tensions is heavy, and we have an obligation to fight injustice, not just analyze it.
There is plenty more to dig into with these texts. We're done here. Thanks for listening.